Hey, time to go through another interview question. This time the challenge is one line of code. Alright, so here we have our question, and the prompt is to write functions log message and greet such that this following one line of code logs hi. So feel free to follow along in your own instance of Replit or your own code editor. Now, there's no doubt that with a question like this, it's going to take a squint or two before you figure out where to start. But the trick to this question, and to any question for that matter, is to break it down step by step. So the very first thing that happens is this log message call. So we can start with that. Let's create a function called log message. Now there's three options to creating the function. You can use a function expression, an arrow function, or a function declaration. I'm going with a function declaration. And this is going to have a message parameter. And let's have it do something simple. It's going to console.log that message. All right. So instead of having this entire input to log message for now, let's start with a smaller use case. We're going to call log message and only input the string hi. Now, if you run this, you're going to get hi in the console. And great, we've already taken care of a huge part of the question. We've written the log message function, and indeed, it's logging hi. All right. So now we get to the more tricky part of the question, which is this entire input to log message over here. This entire input calls a greet function, which has an arrow function whose body is also a greet function, and that one also has an input parameter, which is another arrow function. So even just saying it is a lot, let alone looking at it and trying to code it out. But again, we're going to start with a more isolated case. Instead of doing this entire line right now, let's focus on that last greet call, which has an arrow function of hi passed to it. So let's create a function called greet. And before we figure out what greet will do, well, let's focus on this part over here. This is an arrow function that is going into greet itself as a parameter. It's almost like this arrow function was set to its own variable. That variable would be var return hi. And then we have the greet call passing return hi to greet itself. So we have a function that is going as an input to another function. And that concept is called a callback. So let's represent that idea with a callback as a parameter to the greet function itself. Now, before we do anything else, let's console.log this callback and dig into it. So first have a callback string as an argument to this console.log, and then have the callback variable itself. Once you have all of that, go ahead and run the REPL once more, and you'll find that the callback is that arrow function, which was passed to the greet method. So instead of logging the callback alone, let's see what happens if we actually call the callback. So call the callback by using a pair of parentheses like any other function. Now run that, and the return value is the hi string. Cool. So let's actually return the callback itself. Well, actually, the result of calling the callback from the greet function. So that way, greet is now returning hi. If you do that, you're going to find that the last line that is evaluated is the string hi in the REPL. After all, the REPL evaluates the last line in the program and prints that out. So we see that calling greet and return hi, which is this arrow function here, is returning the string hi. Now, we don't even need this return hi variable. Note that this would also work if we inlined that arrow function, which returns hi itself. So I'm going to comment out the var return hi and the greet call of return hi. Keep track of the fact that hi is the last thing that is evaluated within the REPL. Once you're ready, go ahead and run, and great, it still evaluates to hi. Cool, so we've taken care of another big part. We figured out how to get this chunk of code to return hi, which is a huge part going into the input of log message from that original function overall. So let's go ahead and copy this input to log message as a reference. Now we already know that this inner greet function returns hi as seen within the console. Therefore, we can write this as greet and then pass in an arrow function. And then instead of writing this whole thing out, we can substitute hi. But wait, this looks oddly familiar. We already know that greet with an arrow function of hi returns the string hi. Therefore, this last line also evaluates to hi, which means when you break it down, we now have functionality, which turns this entire chain of arrow functions into the string hi, which means that when we get to log message above, this entire input over here is going to evaluate to hi. And calling log message of hi already does the job of logging the line hi in the console. With that, we can now return to the original question. So let's go ahead and grab the original question, copy it, cut it, and then paste it as the last line of the file. And let's also get rid of those other console.logs, so go ahead and comment them out, so that way they're not distracting. All right, so make sure you have the function log message available, as well as the function greet, which returns its callback. And now on the last line of the file, we have the original question itself. So moment of truth, let's go ahead and run this. And great, it does its job of logging hi within the repo. Cool, so mission accomplished, we succeeded in the interview, the job is done. So the main conclusion to draw from all of this is that JavaScript interviewers are out to get you. In all seriousness though, the purpose isn't to trip you up. The purpose of a question like this is to evaluate your knowledge of fundamental JavaScript concepts like the callback. Callbacks are an essential part in coding in JavaScript, so a question like this can evaluate how much time you spent preparing your JavaScript knowledge and working on some various JavaScript projects. All right, I hope this question has helped show you some fundamental concepts about callbacks. And if anything, when this question comes up in your next JavaScript interview, it's going to be easy peasy. All right, there's plenty more of these interview question type videos to come, as well as other content. So I'll see you in the next video.